Hello, I'm Steve Ashton. I'm the guy who's known on Ravelry and elsewhere on the web as the Wizard of BC, and welcome to Circular Sock Machine Hints and Tips. What we're going to talk about in this episode of Hints and Tips are toes. This is a fairly standard toe done by the antique manuals. You can see that the sides are fairly straight and it forms a fairly flat end at the top. There's a little bitty peak here, and there's sometimes dog ears at the corners where you finish off your Kitchener. Well, this is not a very professional looking toe. So what we're trying to do is come up with a toe that looks more like this one. This is a round toe. You can see that the sides are quite round, the tip is round, and there are no dog ears at the two sides. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, I can do this exact same thing for a heel. The heel also comes out very nice and round. It's completely finished, and it's done exactly the same way. So how we do this, what we're going to do is combine three separate techniques together. The first is to achieve the roundness. The second is a method of doing a very nice clean edge at the edge of the heel and the edge of the toe, and not creating any dog ears at the corners. So this is where we're trying to go. Alright, let's begin a toe. So you can see I have my machine set up. This, by the way, is an Erlbacher Gerhardt Speedster model with an 80 needle cylinder, and it's paired with an 80 needle ribber dial. This is called an equal slot. This allows me to do a lot of different ribbing options. I don't know if you can see, but on the side of the toe I'm doing 6x2 ribs, and this continues down the front of the foot. And then I've done my 5 rows of pre-toe, all plain, and I've got everything set up. I've raised the back half of my needles, my heel spring is engaged, and I'm ready to begin the toe. So we begin, the first portion is doing the rounding. And that is done almost exactly like you would do a normal toe from the manual. So here's how we begin this and do the rounding. Raise one, come around. Now you're going to watch me, and I'm going to do a lot of this work with my fingers. Instead of putting in heel weights immediately, I like using my fingers. And all I'm doing is keeping a little bit of tension on these first couple stitches right at the corners each time. I'm going to be watching right across the back of the cylinder, and I'm going to watch to see if the stitches start to rise up above the cylinder. As soon as they start to rise up, that's when I'm going to put heel forks in. So I've now got 1 and 2, and here comes 2. There's 2 complete. Here's 3. Three is complete. 4. Number 4 needle complete. Here's 5. And you can see my needles, or my stitches, are just barely starting to rise up above the top of the cylinder. So at the end of 5, I'm going to put in some heel forks. So there is 5 complete. Now I'm going to put in a heel for it. Here goes 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And needle lip is correct. So we're starting number 6. 6 is complete. Now here comes the trick of rounding. Now I'm going to make a disclaimer here for just a minute. I did not invent any of these techniques. This is all pretty well known. It's just I think I'm the first to put all 3 of them together and do a video of it. The round heel and toe is available as a free pattern on the Erlbacher Gerhardt site. The way of doing the increase without wrapping, called magic no wrap, or sometimes called a suicide heel. That's fairly well known. It's actually named after Sue Vinesky. And then we're also going to be showing you how to do it with no dog ears. So that's the 3 parts of this, and we've just completed, we're getting ready on the first part, how to do the rounding. Now this particular customer has a fairly wide heel, and it's not a very prominent heel. If you have a very deep heel, you can actually start your heels 1 or 2 needles beyond your halfway hash marks. If you have a wide foot, wide toes, or a wide heel, you can decrease or increase the number of needles that you work for your increase and decrease. This particular customer, I'm only going to do 10 needles down, leaving 20 in the center, and then I'm going to increase 10 on each side. So, to do the rounding, we've done 6 needles individually, 1 at a time. We're now going to raise 7 and 8 together, knit around. On the other side, 7 and 8 up together. And then we're also going to do 9 and 10 up. Now if you're doing a 12 needle reduction, you might do 6, 7, 8, 9, or excuse me, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 in pairs. For this one, it's only going to be 7, 8, 9, and 10. So there's 9 and 10 up. And on the other side, 9 and 10 up. And that basically completes the rounding of the heel and the toe. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing when I do my increases. I'm going to lower 10 and 9, 10 and 9, lower 8, 7 together, 8, 7 together. But here comes the second part of how to do this type of toe. How to do a magic wrap no, or a magic no wrap increase. Now this is not doing manually wrapping of needles, it's not doing 2 down, 1 up, or whatever method you do. And there's a little trick to it. When you put the needles down, if you push them all the way down, the latches will have a tendency to close. And so we're only going to push the needles down part way, just so the latch is on the outside of the yarn, right here. Now watch, as I come around, the latches are going to try to come up, but they're caught underneath the yarn carrier. And that holds them open until the new yarn can come in, be laid into the hook, and then the needle is pulled down and the latches close automatically. Doesn't require any manual or manipulation of any kind. Here's on the other side, and you'll here are 7 and 8 together. Seven and 8 complete on the other side. Now the big advantage of this type of increase is the speed and the ease and the simplicity that it works. I'm going to push down now one needle at a time for the next 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Watch how easy and fast this type of increase is. It's just that easy. Now I've had some needles start to rise up, so I'm going to put some more heel forks in. I don't bring my heel forks way up near the top of my cylinder. I want the tension of the pulling down of the forks to be spread by the knitting itself. It kind of spreads out like this. So the further down the forks are, the further apart the spread of the tension is. And that's actually a good thing. So we now have 1, 2, 3, 4 up. There's 5, 6, 7, all the way to 10. And we're now going to continue with the magic no wrap. So here's 4. Four is complete. Here's 3. Three complete. Now notice when I put these needles down, I do not push them all the way down. Right there, the yarn is, or the latch is sitting just on the outside of the yarn. So that when the yarn carrier comes around, the latch is held right down here by the bottom of the yarn carrier, and then the new yarn can go into the hook, and then the latch closes. So there's 2 complete. And then we come to the last needle that we're going to drop. I'm going to drop it, but I'm going to manually wrap this last needle and the next standing needle. Now the reason for doing this on a heel and a toe is to close up that little hole that will sometimes form right at the edges. But as I come around, you notice I lowered and I wrapped 2 needles, the last of my increase and the first of the standing needles. Now I'm going to come around to the other side, and that's where I'm going to stop on a toe. Normally you would then lower this last one, and you would wrap the last needle and the first standing needle, and you would continue around here to the right. Well, you're creating another row of knitting, and then you're going to put a Kitchener in. That's an additional row of knitting, and that's what causes the dog ears, that extra added row. So what I'm going to do on this way is I'm simply going to eliminate one row of knitting, then I'm going to replace it with the Kitchener. So I've knitted around, my last needle is dropped. On this side it's wrapped, it comes around to this side, I drop that needle, I'm going to bring my working yarn to the inside, just as if I were doing that wrap, and that is where I am going to stop. So there's the yarn on the inside. Now I'm going to cut my working yarn, and this is so that I can form my Kitchener. Bring my yarn carrier around, and I'm going to simply put my working yarn down inside. Then I'm going to bring in my cast off yarn. Now I want you to notice when I put in my cast off yarn, I'm going to use a highly contrasting color yarn. I want to be able to see this cast off really easily. So I find where my project yarn would have gone, the path that it would have followed. And that path is just beyond that first raised needle. I'm going to hold that, and now I'm going to continue with my knitting. And I'm going to knit this last row in cast on yarn. There we go. Now you'll notice here's my working yarn and here's my cast off yarn, and that is where it would have normally done. The working yarn would have normally done where you see the white cast off yarn. So I'm going to leave those where they are. I'm about here, so now I'm going to lower my needles on the top half of my toe. Make sure all my lashes are open. There we go. Double check lashes. Got one open, or got one closed, right there. There's another one closed, right there. And then I'm going to do my cast off. Just like you would normally do it. So I'm going to pull these nice and snug, hold on to them. There we go. Now when I do my cast off, I like doing 3, 4, 5 rows, and that gives me a really nice finish to be able to finish my cast off. So cut my yarn, and now I'm just going to bring the sock right off the machine. Okay, remove my heel forks, and I'll see you in a minute, and I'm going to show you the extra added bonus tip, which I'm going to add absolutely for free. One of the things that I have found the hardest for most people is figuring out where to start the Kitchener and where to end their Kitchener stitch. Most people can do the middle portion fairly easily, but it's always the start and finish which are difficult. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a little trick. If you remember, here's our working yarn. It's going to go behind and wrap behind this stitch, and then wrap behind, and then it's going to come out right where you see the white cast off. So I'm going to use little knitting stitch markers to hold those stitches for me. So this is going to be stitch marker number 3. Then I'm going to go over and I'm going to find the next stitch over. This is number 2. Please notice that there are 2 stitches at needle number 2. The next one over, this becomes number 1. And on the other side, the next one becomes number 4. So there you have it. 1, 2, 3, and 4 stitches. Now these cannot drop inside, and I can always find them. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to thread up a needle, and we're going to begin. Alright, I've got my needle threaded, and here's my cast off yarn, and here's the sequence. I'm going to go in this way and around stitch number 3, and I'm going to come down in number 2. So here are my conventions that I use. Stitch 1, 2, 3, 4. If I say in, I'm starting from outside the sock going in, and if I say out, I'm going in from here out from the sock. So let's begin by going in, following the cast off yarn, and go around number 3 and in number 2. There's those 2 stitches right there. Now, if you remember, when we did the other side, we pulled just a bit of slack out of the yarn. Well, here we're going to do exactly that same thing. Now, I'm going to go ahead and take the stitch markers out because they've done their work. And I'm going to hold on number 3. Notice now that there are 2 stitches at both 2 and at 3. And here is where I'm going to pull that little bit of slack, and you're going to watch this little hole right here is just going to close right up. Watch. Okay, there it goes. I didn't quite get it tight, so I'm going to pull in. There it goes. There's my slack. So you can see I'm able to pull the slack out of the stitch, and now I can pull on the yarn and that will come right out. There we go. See it tight? And the hole completely disappears. So I went around 3, in 2, out 3, in 4. I'm just following the path of the cast-off yarn at this point. Okay. Now I'm going to cross over to the other side and I'm going to go out 1. But I dropped my yarn, so I'm going to have to rethread my needle. Okay, so I've come in 4. I'm now going to go out 1. No, excuse me. Around 3, in 2, out 3, in 4, out 2, and in 1. I'm going to put this up on the screen so you can write it down if you want, the sequence of how you do this. And I'm also I'm working at kind of a disadvantage. I'm trying to show everybody, and I'm doing this very close. It's kind of awkward for me. Okay, there we go. So this stitch marker can now come out. This stitch marker can come out. And I can start by snugging this up, and you're going to see this start to close. See it? There we go. So now we cross over to the other side, and we come out 4, and we are done. That's the beginning of the Kitchener. Now, I normally do my Kitcheners from the purl side, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this sock inside out. The reason I started on the knit side is because that's the same way that you see the sock on the machine. But here I am purl side, and you can see that my end has already started to close up. So I've come out 4, I follow the path of the yarn, go in the next one, come across, come out the next one, right there, follow the path of the yarn, in and out, and we're just going to continue this all the way to the other side. Now when I Kitchener, notice the reason that I use the high contrasting yarn. You can almost see it begin to form 2 white railroad tracks. And if I do this, and I'm very careful to keep those railroad tracks parallel, my stitches are always the correct tension. So there we go. Follow the yarn, in the new, there we go, in the new, across, out the old, follow the yarn, in the new, out the old, cross, and I'm going to continue Kitchenering this toe, and then I'll stop and I'll come back and show you how to finish. Okay, we're back. So I've got the Kitchener done almost all the way. See my railroad tracks? And I'm right down to my end. I put stitch markers exactly the same way I did on the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, split, that's my halfway hash mark. And you can see the stitches can't fall inside and I can always find them. So let's go ahead and finish up the Kitchener. By the way, doing it this way, total elapsed time so far is right at 3.5 minutes. When I'm demoing, it takes a little bit longer, but doing it on my own, I can put it in my lap and do it in about 3.5 minutes. Alright, just about to the end. Trying to find one stitch, trying to drop inside. That's why we use the stitch markers. Come around, out, that one, there we go. Now I'm to this one, so I'm just going to put it through where that stitch marker is. That stitch marker can come out. Go to the other side. In that stitch marker can now come out. Out there. In this stitch marker, this one can now come out. And getting ready for the last one. Right there. And in, there's my double that's formed by that wrap that we did at the first unraised needle. Now I am going to do one little extra thing. There we go, closed, and I'm going to come out that one stitch. All I'm really trying to do is get my yarn to this side so that I can start to bury it in my knitting and finish. So, but before I do that, I'm going to reverse this. And we'll go ahead and pull the cast off yarn off and see if the Kitchener came out well. Okay, there's where it starts to go in. With that on this side, grab. And pull. And it all comes right on out. There we go. And no dog ear at this end, no hole. No dog ear at this end, and no hole. And a really nice looking Kitchener on a round magic no wrap, no dog ear toe. There you go. Thanks a lot.